Hey, Nichelle, how's it going?
Hello, Ron. How's it going? Hey, Lisa.
Good, good.
Good morning, Ashley.
Good morning, Ashley. Good morning, Lisa. How's it going?
Good. How are you guys?
Doing great. I'll
Doing
get to
well, and
bring you
you?
Good.
some good information. All right, so I'm going to share my screen for the presentation so we can get moving for you. And I think I actually figured out the technology too. Last time, if you weren't here, it was a challenge.
It was a growth in process.
Yes, exactly. That's a little bit more
That's
gracious than I was giving myself.
that Libra side of me.
Exactly. You're nice. But yeah, so welcome everybody in for our homebuyer seminar for this month. We're going to have a good agenda today. Let me make sure the slides are moving through. Current slide. Ayo,
Yep.
look at that. We're going to introduce ourselves and cover a bunch of important topics: buy versus rent, anatomy of a loan payment, types of loans, qualifying for a loan, the loan process, and what is next. It's going to be awesome. So, a little bit more. I'll let Nichelle introduce herself and we'll go from there.
Yes. Hi, I am Nichelle Boylan, and I've hung my hat with Century 21. I'm a GRI ABR realtor. I work in the DFW area and about 20 miles outside of it. Um, I reached out to Ron almost a year ago about this program because it's a passion of me to educate my clients so that they're making informed decisions about one of the biggest decisions, financial decisions they'll ever make in their life. And so we host these on a monthly basis. Um, and the goal of this is so that you understand some of the benefits there are as far as it relates to buying versus selling, have an opportunity to ask questions in safe space, and more importantly, get to know a little bit about who we are, what our philosophy is, and our modus operandi as it is, and how we service our clients when we partner together. Um, Back to you, Ron.
Yeah, and I'm Ron Toy. I'm a senior loan officer with Meridian Mortgage. I've been in this business about 10 years. I've helped over 2,000 families with their home investment journey, and I'm actually going on year 12, so a little over 10 years. And some of the things that I do is I help counsel people start to finish. And it's not just about this one transaction. It's about, I want to be there for the last one. And so, how I do that, and I say this, is I guide people along the path of successful home ownership when others just showed them to the door. Because we're going to look at your current and long term goals, make sure everything we do is prudent and suitable for those goals so that you don't feel pressured to pay more than what you want on a property and have a higher payment than you want. I want to make sure we protect you from threats that you don't even know are there in homeownership. And so these are some of the things that I do in order to make sure that I earn your trust and future business and connect with the right partners to make sure that they align with the same goals. And so today we're going to be going over some of those important aspects in the way I approach business and the way Nichelle approaches business that is a little bit different than what you might see in the market. And so a lot of things that I like to touch on in this is that we talk about people who bought in the 80s and or this time or that time, or if you bought my Apple stock at a certain time, that you were lucky, but luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity. So you guys are on this call, you're participating, and you're ready to start making decisions. And some of the things that I want to make sure you know, because when we're talking about rent versus own, why is it so important? Why are people falling farther and farther behind? Part of that is they're not aware of the just absolute staggering numbers about home price appreciation across the country and this is showing you a chart since 1942. And if you think about some of the big economic issues and recessions and wars and bond market massacres and bread shortages that we've seen since 1942, the only time in our nation's history that home prices went down collectively for appreciation, 1990, 1%, and then those times right there between 2007 and 11, whenever we had a mixture of being overbuilt, which we'll show, and a drop in population for what they call birthing rates and also housing formations. But did you guys know that the average homeowner has 40 times the net worth of a renter? This is, and that's across all income levels. And so when we're looking at that, it's something that drives me and makes sure that I wake up every morning, get to work, and do as much as I can. I didn't leave the office last night till 12:30. And so because I believe in this so much, and I know that there are efforts being put in place to make homeownership harder and harder and harder for entry level getting in. And because there's corporations and companies that are buying 30 and 40% of the inventory in some areas. And this is the data that we can track because should it have been a surprise in 2006, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 that we're going to have a housing problem? No, it should not have been because we all track this data. It's with the Bureau of Labor and Statistics. With you look at this graph, these are the population birthing rates in baby boomers, 76 million. But Gen X, it went down to 55 million. So you had a 20 million drop in birthing rates between two generations, which is it's sometimes that happens. More education, better healthcare. Sometimes they're like, I don't want to be doing this. It ain't for me. I'm out, and that's fine. But you have a drop in population, and then look at why this is important when you see these dates in 73. The average age of a first-time homebuyer or housing formation was typically 33 years old. So when you project out 33 years from that point, you get 2006. Well, look at this orange graph right here, the bar graph here. That's completions. What that means is new homes being built. You had the most homes ever being built at a time period where housing formations were at a historic low. And if you look at the time period where the home prices went down, completions outpaced formations. Of course, this is how this works, supply and demand. And then you had inflated demand in the economy because you had people that were being able to fog a mirror so they could get a loan. Those were like bank statement loans, stated income loans, where you could just say you made 500 grand and they're going to give you six houses and a condo and your dog could get one too. That literally happened one time. And so, but if you start to see what happens in 2014 and beyond, this flips. And so that's why we have to make sure to go back and look at the data to track the numbers. That's why home prices are like, I'm going to wait for housing prices to drop. There are softening in markets, but that doesn't mean appreciation slows always. Sometimes it's flat. And right now, the projections for year over year home price appreciation for 2025 was lower than normal, but it was 1.1 to 2% appreciation, where we were at some times looking at much higher appreciation rates. And so if we show you that, because I'm going to get that right here. So just go back to that other slide so you can see it. It's intense, and we'll also cover some of these things whenever we at the end. And so let me get back on that. Why is it not changing slides here? Go. There we go. And so you can see the appreciation again. And I'll send you this data. You can go to Case Shillard and look all this up yourself. I am very big about transparency. I track the markets like a hawk. And BLS.gov is a website you can go and look at all of this data. And it's important because, again, average homeowner has 40 times the net worth of a renter. Why? If you're making a payment and it's 100% interest to rent, but you're also not gaining appreciation and you're not getting forced savings through principal balance reduction. And it's normal to feel concerned about buying, right? What's the anatomy of a payment? You have your principal and interest. That's the bulk of it. Then you have your taxes and insurance. That's what comes into the PITI. And so by talking about this, we're going to help to reduce stress so that you guys feel comfortable and confident. And again, we'll go over certain questions at the end, but like some of the things that we hear when we're talking to buyers, they don't know what types of loans there are. What's the mystique? What's the differences? What's good or bad? Because the media is going to say one thing or another. But obviously, there's conventional loans with as low as 3% down. There's government sponsored loans. And what does that mean? It's a government backed loan. So typically, they have a little bit lower interest rate. Those are FHA, VA, and USDA. What's a jumbo loan? Well, that's when the loan amount is above the conforming loan limit And right now in Dallas and most major counties in Texas, that's $832,750 of of your loan amount. So anything above that is considered a jumbo. There's DPA programs, which we'll cover in this. What is a DPA program? It's a down payment assistance program. Usually there's grant options, forgivable second liens, or repayable second liens. There's specialty programs also for like doctors, construction loans, one time or two time close, renovation loans, and reverse mortgages. But what we're going to go into right now is staying on track is the qualification. What is it like to get qualified for a loan? What are we looking at? What is the lender going to review? And part of that is going to be the first part is just your credit. Now, usually when you talk with a loan officer, they're going to be able to do a true soft pull on your credit so that as long as it's pulling two bureaus, you can still run AUS, which is automated underwriting that gives you the details of what documentation you're going to need for an underwriter to finalize and actually fully approve your file. And so we're going to look at credit, and that can be confusing because as a consumer, we get FICO score, what's the score, which one is the one that's for mortgages, what's my scores need to be, and it's totally understandable. And they're thinking some people pre-underwrite themselves and think, oh, I can't buy right now because my credit. But look at this right here. I always show this to help bring down the concern for people about real life situations. When you have uh, the fact that the timeline for getting into a home, if you file Chapter 13, being significantly less than if you have a foreclosure on your record, is to show you that if you are going through things, it's not the end of the world. It happens. People have to go and file bankruptcy. Sometimes happen, but it's not the end. Don't prejudge your situation. Let's talk and get a game plan in place and make sure that you're set up for success because we don't want you to get to foreclosure. And how we can help you get there is talk to somebody that cares enough about you and that you feel safe enough about. Because if you're going through struggles post closing and you're in a home and maybe you lost a job, medical stuff, whatever it is, don't lose your house because you're worried about having to file for bankruptcy. Talk to a bankruptcy attorney because there's ways to protect your assets and at least you're in a home still building wealth versus worried about what other people think. Who cares? They're not paying your bills. There's real stuff going on out there, and sometimes people avoid it and then they end up having a foreclosure. But I say all this, even if somebody had a foreclosure, it's not the end of the world. We just got to document it, maybe 3 years or 7, 2 years with VA. So the next thing we look at is income. Some people are worried if they're self-employed, what kind of documentation am I going to need? Is there different programs? What can I do? Or if they're W-2'd, hourly, there's all of these different scenarios. That's why every loan individually is different. But in essence, we have these options to look at your picture as a whole and document it and make sure you're good to go. So typically they say 2 years for employment history is required. It can be, it helps, but if we have less, don't worry. We can document it and make sure that we put together a clear and specific timeline for you to get into a home. It's never too early to start planning for your home investment. Self-employed, we're usually going to look at 2-year taxes unless you've been in the same line of work in the same business for 5 years, and some programs will allow for only 1 year of tax returns. So that's where there's always caveats. The next part is the down payment, right? The assets. What does your savings look like? Reserves. Some people still think you need 20% down or 10,000, 20,000 crazy dollars, right? It's not the case. There are so many options with seller concessions, down payment assistance programs, which we're going to cover, that can help you get in. But we are going to look at bank statements, typically 60 days worth of your bank statements, the most recent. 401ks, that's another option to help with down payment. Gifts, all of them allow for gifts. We just have to properly source them and make sure that you're aware of it up front and early so nothing is a surprise or a shock. Because that's the worst. When you get under contract, you're going through the process and something's like a sidebar that's whammed you in the head and it could have all been prevented if the loan officer would have just had a conversation with you about it up front. And so this is a big piece of the qualification is making sure you have the assets. To get under contract on a home, what you need is your earnest option and appraisal money and inspection money, but inspection is different. But these are called your POC costs or paid outside of closing costs. And so a lot of people think they need to have their down payment up front, kind of like when you buy a car, they're like, well, put this money down. With a house, it's different. You pay your upfront cost, which is your earnest option appraisal. The rest is paid at closing. Now, in between that day and closing, maybe we're getting grants, gifts, seller concessions, etc. So that reduces your actual cash to close at the end, which we're going to cover in a slide here coming up. But T-Shack is one of my favorite down payment and closing cost assistance programs here in Texas. We have a ton of them, but this one is a fantastic program that has great rates. They have grants, which are treated as a gift. They have 3-year forgivable second liens, which is if there's no interest, there's no payment. As long as you stay in the home 3 years, the funds are completely forgiven. They also have options for assistance where if you don't need any funds to close, but you just want a low rate, they have really low rate options because they have these grants from the government to help get people into homes. So I wanted to show you the anatomy of what I've had clients their actual this I do a total cost analysis for everybody I work with, and I wanted to show you what the monthly payment would look like using T-Shack, getting 5% assistance, and the total out of pocket start to finish. And this right here still counts for the earnest option appraisal. So you can see here what the payment would be roughly on a 300,000, 350, 375, 400, and the cash to close. If the sellers give enough of a seller credit, you can get a check back at closing for up to what you put in earnest, option, and appraisal. So these are phenomenal
Ron,
tools.
can I interject for just a second?
Yeah, absolutely. Interrupt anytime. I'll get in the flow. I
And
haven't
one of the
taken this
things
of the day yet. We're gonna go on a spirit
And one of
walk.
the things that I like about Ron's analysis that he does is that Ashley is aware of this as well as another client of mine. When he gives me this, I know what we need to ask the seller for so that we can get seller concessions.
Mhm.
And I was able, and two of my clients recently get 10,000 in seller concessions so that they can get buy down rates and really
Mhm.
have flexibility simply because I got the data before we went shopping and we didn't have to estimate what it was going to look like on the end. And so this is a game changer. And I know he's going to talk about it. But the other part of it is I had two clients last year. They got all of their earnings option money back at close simply
Yep.
because they utilized this program.
Exactly. And that's why like it's so important to have that right synergy partner between your realtor and your lender because they know how to work together and they have the tools that are familiar with. This analysis, I can get real geeky with it and work with your financial advisor and it can be really awesome. This is just a snip. This is just like a little piece. And I have a video that goes along with it that walks you through the different loan scenarios and then I can make them property specific, but it's an educational tool that's better than like a PDF of like a basic fee sheet because there is a closing cost tab and fee details and all this other stuff. But this helps bring the reality back. Even worst case scenario, to buy a house between 300 and 400,000 is 6,500 bucks max total. Like some people think you need $20,000 at least 30, 40,000 and not that's not the case. And again, once you put your earnest option money and appraisal in, that reduces this cash to close number because that's your paid outside of closing costs. So on a $300,000 house, usually option is about 100 to 200 bucks and earnest is 1% of the sales price typically. So that's 3,000. Maybe you pay another 100 bucks in option, so 3,100 appraisal. Well, you're on this call, so you get your appraisal covered by me. But right here, so let's say $3,100. You'd subtract that from that. So from that day forward after contract execution, you just got to figure out 3,000 bucks. That can come from a gift. That can come from seller concessions. That can come from, you know, selling a car if we properly document our trailer, our assets, our gold, or so whatever it is, there's ways to make it happen. So dreams of home ownership are achievable. We can make it happen. We just got to get a game plan. And so this is what I love to show people because when I hear most common objections is I don't have enough money saved. Well, how much do you get on your tax returns? Oh, usually 2 grand, 5 grand. Great. Well, now let's get you a home. They're like, what? I can get a home? Because also when you lease, if you're leasing a house, usually you got to put first month, last month, security deposit, pet deposits, all these deposits. So it ends up being almost the equivalent, if not more, than actually freaking buying a house. But nobody is talking about these programs. So me and Michelle were like, we're going to be the change we want to see in the world. So we're going to do these once a month and make sure that we do our part. And this is where we're walking people through it because it takes away that fear of what does it really take to get into a home. Because again, when we go back to the home price appreciation, how are people falling farther and farther behind? If you're paying $2,000 a month in rent, that's 24 grand for the year. The average home price appreciation in North Texas is 5% for the year. So on a $300,000 house, that's 15 grand a year. So if you add that 15,000 to the 24 grand you just paid in rent because you have opportunity costs, you did not make appreciation. We're not even talking about the tax benefits. You're almost 50 grand behind in 1 year for renting. And people are like, how am I falling farther and farther behind? It's by design. And that's what we got to get ahead of because I don't like people in control of me in any way whatsoever. So I assume others don't like it either. So this is how we take our power back collectively. The last part is once you're under contract, we got to finalize the approval of the loan by proving the property. This is such a pivotal piece because you have to make sure that you are secure in your loan and the ability to repay it. And that comes with is the property in a condition that sustains your time period you're going to be in the home. And so like there's different with FHA, VA, different types of appraisals, there's certain things that they're going to make sure and pay attention to. And so, like with FHA, especially, they're going to look at health and safety concerns, lot grade, what that's about, because that sounds like wizardry, and I'm experiencing it right now, is where's the water going to go when it rains? And I'm right now triggered because I bought a very, very, very expensive home. I didn't pay attention to this stuff because it's magic words. Even though I'm in the business, I'm like, oh yeah, it looks good. Yeah, everything's done. You see what they're talking about grade. You see how this dirt is up above the brick, the mason line? You don't see any of the foundation here. This is a threat potentially because water can get into the house. Well, right here is just a porch, so it probably wouldn't be a thing. But if you see a front of a house and it has dirt above the brick, there's supposed to be at least 4 inches, like 1 inch of gap is not a good. 2 inches, it needs to be like 4 inches of gap between the mason and the foundation. If you don't have that, you are at risk because bugs can get in and water. And I am living through this right now in my house. Nearly $1 million house. It rained, water came in, and now the insurance is not covering it, and I got to pay to fix the floor. And guess what? In my house, every freaking inch of the floor is the same flooring except for the bathrooms. It's going to cost like nearly $50,000. Yeah. Do you think I'm not going to start covering that on every first call? Making sure that they're aware of, hey, your realtor's going to do this and they're going to look around the house. And if they mention anything about the soil, that this is the reason why. So it's not like your inspector or your people are trying to make a problem for you. They're trying to protect you. And so that's something that what we do is help reduce the risk and the fear of what could potentially be a problem. Why I talk about escrow account shortages. If we've had a meeting, you know that I talked about escrow account shortages on the very first call because these are the threats to what could happen in the future that would cause you to be in a bad situation during homeownership. The other part is how important qualifying your home is and paying attention to it and making sure that your roof is good. And that's why Nichelle, she partners with some of the best people that are going to go out there and look at the roof once you're under contract because you have an option period to be able to back out and still get your earnest money back. But she's going to have them look at the roof. She's going to have them look at the plumbing. If there's any signs of issues with the foundation, she's going to have or ask for a structural engineer report because while it is a place for you to live, it's also an investment vehicle. It's one of the largest financial decisions a person makes. Maybe they do it 2 to 3 times. So the company, your lender is going to order an appraisal. They typically take 3 to 10 business days to come back, depending on the loan program. They're going to look at the major pieces. Now, in essence, the appraisal does protect the lender more than the buyer. We're making sure that the property's there, that it's structurally sound, and you have a home inspection that you do that protects you. But these work together because, in essence, we are partnering with you. So by us protecting us, we're also protecting you. And so we're going to look through the house. We're going to go through it. And guess what? With most programs, if the property doesn't appraise, it gives you an opportunity to back out of the deal and still get your earnest money back. So several steps throughout the process, there's mechanisms in place to protect your hard-earned money and savings. And this is something that Nichelle is a stickler about, and I am as well, that we're going to track those dates and make sure that you are an informed consumer and you don't have any bad surprises because we know how important it is to stay ahead of it. And so, in essence, the process is pretty simple. When you start this, you're going to talk with Nichelle. She'll usually introduce you to me, which we're going to get you pre-approval done. We're going to get the application in, get some basic documents so that you can go out and start finding your home. Once you do find that home, we get the contract and then we send the initial disclosures. Now, the initial disclosures we have to estimate a little high because we don't know what insurance you're going to have. We don't know, we don't have the title documents yet, which include like the property taxes and things like that. I look it up early, but we still got to wait for that title documents to come in. Once that is in, we submit that to processing for them to do their job, the wizardry behind the scenes, all that. And in that time period, you're usually getting your inspections and we're ordering appraisals. And so then once all that comes back, we'll be able to submit to underwriting, get that cleared out, and then get you over to your final approval process where we're sending out the closing disclosure. And then while we have that closing disclosure, it has to be out at least 3 days prior to closing. We try to get it out at least 10 days, that initial one, because we still have to balance with title, make sure all the fees are right so that you have your final closing disclosure, the documents are delivered to title, and we table fund. That's huge. You need to know about that because when you table fund, that means as soon as the documents come back to the lender, the funds are issued because you don't want to ever have a delay where you get your keys because you don't get keys until the loan is funded. And so knowing if the lender you're working with table funds, if they have control of the process, do they sub out any of this part? Is there any potential threats of delays? Because imagine if you have movers at your house and the moving trucks are loaded and you find out you can't move into your house until Monday because the funding isn't going to happen because it's after 2 o'clock in the afternoon on a Friday. And now what do? You thought you're moving in over the weekend. Now you're just like, well, I guess I'm sleeping in the title office. So, but that has happened to people. And that's why you got to know these things up front. Up front, I table fund to avoid this. And I'm usually at every closing. So if there's anything that awkward happens, I'm in there with you. So, well, it's something that is important because I feel like if you're not willing to be in the title office at the closing table, are you nervous about something else? And so I like to be participating in that situation. But you sign the documents, you get all that in. We take pictures, have some champagne if you are about that. If not, we can do tea. And then we fund. And now you get the keys to your house. And guess what? The journey doesn't stop there because then we'll go into that later. But we're going to make sure you file your homestead exemptions. We're going to make sure that you get to contest your values and be successful in homeownership. Because again, it's not just to the door. It's all the way guiding you along the path to your last and final door. And so that for me is my part. And next we'll get into Nichelle.
Correct. And yes, and so what Ron was indicating is that we don't just open doors and we don't just help you negotiate a contract and find a home. We have an annual review process. So at the beginning of each year, he's going to help you review your escrow accounts. I'm going to send you reminders about your exemptions for as far as your property taxes go. I'm going to reach out to you in case you need any data from me about recent sales so that you can protest your taxes in the state of Texas. And by the grace of God, we now have $160 tax exemption in place that went into effect with our most recent voting. So whatever the price of your home is, you automatically have a tax exemption for homestead of $160,000. If you are disabled or a senior, then that bumps it up to $60,000 for a total of $200,000. With that being said, we talk about why is it important and how do you choose your real estate agent. One, you've got to find someone that serves your area. They need to understand not just the community, the neighborhood, the amenities in the area. They need to know what's coming to the area. Are you in an EJT, which is what we call an extra jurisdictional territory? And why is that important? There's a place in Flower Mound, I think it was called Fossil Creek, that was an EJT. A realtor did not tell their client this, and they got annexed into Flower Mound, and now they're paying additional property taxes simply because the realtor wasn't aware that that was the potential. It doesn't mean that you still don't move into that property. We're about giving you the information so that you can prepare for that and be aware of that. The other thing is you have to understand what type of partnerships your realtor is working with. Is your realtor, she can be on a team by herself or he can be on a team by himself, but does he have partners? Does he have a good finance team behind him? Does he have a good title team behind him? Even if you're not using their title company and we have an issue arise, is there someone that they can report back to and go, can you look this over for me? And I have that happen all the time where I've got one right now where the buyer side, we didn't pick the title company because they're paying for it, but my client who's based out of New York and is moving here was suspect. And so he wanted to have a second eye. And so I literally gave it to my title company and they looked in and checked it off and gave him a checklist of things he needed to address. And you don't get that everywhere if you don't kind of do some research about your team. A lot of people want to also talk about is how consistently are they going to communicate with you? Do they listen to whatever your communication preferences is? This process, and Ron knows I joke about this a lot, but we become friends. Like we become really close friends because anywhere from 4 weeks to 3 months, depending on what your timetable is, we're probably spending weekends together. We're spending weekdays together. And when it's over with, I feel like I've lost my best friend because you guys are all happy in your house. And I was like, okay, I I don't see y'all on weekends no more. What we doing?
Yeah.
Which is kind of funny because I have several of my clients that have invited me out to eat. I think Ron, we're going in a couple of weeks to a client that we help close for dinner. Like we really consider this a relationship building. It's not about the transaction for us. I have clients that call me up all the time to ask me. I've got a client who lives over here. We bought her house by the Cowboy Singer. And we have FIFA coming here. And so every time I see her property, I'm letting her know, hey, you can use an Airbnb. So she reached out to me. She goes, hey, so how do you think I should do this? So I literally stay with my clients throughout the process. And I think that's essential for any realtor that you have. Are they going to be there for you? Are they going to be a guide for you? I had a client that I recently picked up and I asked her about her previous realtor that sold her house. And I go, so what was the communication like? She goes, oh, you guys follow up with us afterwards? And that shook me because I don't understand how after a transaction you don't stay in contact to make sure that everything was done properly. So when you're choosing your real estate agent, you have to vibe with them. They have to be able to listen to you, to understand what you're asking for, and realize that they work for you. And I understand that I have to earn your business, not just when we sign that contract, but every single day. And if they're not willing to do that, then perhaps it may be time to find someone else. And that's just how passionate I am about it. Because this is my reputation and my clients' financial future and there's nothing that I'm going to play with about that in any form or fashion. Next slide, Ron.
Gotcha.
And so if you had a browse strategy session with me, we would have gone over this. And if you didn't and you're a client of mine, you definitely still would have received this. And what this is our 12 steps to the buyer process. The first step is going to always be we'll have that initial consultation. We'll understand what your buyer needs is, depending on how it is that you came through to me. We want to know what your non negotiables are, what your desired area is. We'll talk about how compensation works, what representation includes, and so forth. And then I will determine whether or not you have a lender. If you have a lender, we're more than welcome to work with your lender. I do ask that you at least give Ron a chance just to see what he's talking about. And in part because I'm going to say I'm biased just because I've seen the work that he does. And I'm going to be full disclosure with that. He knows that I'm very biased because I've had lenders that didn't take their job seriously and it created problems for my clients. And that's important to me that we have a smooth transaction. And what I do not need for any of my clients is to be ready to close and 3 days before realize that my lender cannot fund them because they didn't do something right in their process. And that happened to me. And so I'm very particular about who I partner with so that my clients are protected. But whoever you decide to work with, once you work with them, we go through and get what we call the keys. That's your pre-approval. Once we have your keys, we can start driving the car. I will start giving you analysis in particular homes that of interest to you. Normally through my Real Scout portal, when you'll select at least two or three of them, we'll go out and look at them. We'll find one that works for you that feels like homes to you. And when it feels like home, we'll put that contract in based off of the analysis. And I don't pick the amount, I just structure the deal. I will run a comparative market analysis over the last 90 days, and I'll give you a range of what houses have sold in the area for you. Once I've done that, we will figure out what price point we want to ask. And based off of what you're asking and what you're ultimately trying to do, will determine how I think it's best to structure that deal for a automatic approval with, with limited countering, or if we have to counter, still where it's going to be a win-win for you. Then we're going to go into the earnest and option money. Earnest and option in Texas is due 3 days after we sign the contract, up to 3 days. I am the person that I like to have it within the same day or within 24 hours. And here's the reason why that is. We cannot start inspections until earnest and option money have been paid. My previous world, I was a project manager. And so my mindset requires that I do a processes a certain way. And I know for a fact that if I wait until the last minute for that inspection, we may find out that we need a plumbing inspection. We may find out that we need a roof inspection or an electrical inspection. And I've had clients on the other side that their realtors waiting until the last day. They didn't get all their inspections in. And yes, we ended up closing, but they were in a point where they were at risk of losing their earnest money. My number one job, no matter what anybody tell you, is not to help you find a house. My number one job is to protect your money. That is my number one job. Everything else is secondary. And so when I'm looking at my processes, I'm making sure that I'm protecting your money at the end of the day. And so that's why when Ron was talking about the timetables and about the dates, I give you a critical date calendar. We look at that calendar and I'm texting you, hey, do we have this? What's going on with this? And then we get through with the inspections. If we get a really good house, and not all houses are going to be 100%, some houses are going to need some repairs. And if it's a major component, we're going to negotiate those repairs. If it's something like caulking, we probably won't really negotiate that because caulking is kind of like a maintenance issue and it's low key. You go buy caulking for $3 and you can kind of recaulk that. But if it's, the roof is falling in, caving in, you've got some leaks underneath the sink, then those are definitely some things that we're going to have a conversation about. And in many cases, for no other reason than financing isn't going to fund with those type of issues. Then we're going to move into your home ownership quote. You notice I'm skipping 6 because I always skip 6 for just a moment. And I'll come back to it because it wants you to schedule your utilities and everything else. I'm never going to ask you to schedule utilities or anything that's going to potentially cost you money until we clear option. And the reason that is because option is typically 5 to 10 days, depending on the home, depending on what's happening. And that option period is where you do your due diligence. It's
Hmm.
also where you have the unrestricted right to terminate the contract without cause, which basically means, and I joke about this, but I tell all of my clients this, we can find what we believe is your perfect home. We can sign the contract, we can get it executed. You can go to bed, you can have a dream. You can wake up the next morning and call me and say, Nichelle, little baby Jesus told me not to buy this house. I am going to give you a document that says terminate. We're going to sign it, and then we're going to get it back over to title. We're going to get back over to the other side. You're going to be terminated, and you're going to get your earnest money back. You won't get your option money back, which is typically $100 to $200 because that's what we paid the seller to take it off the market. But you do get the buck of your money. That's why I don't have you pay for anything until after we've cleared option, because what if you got all your utilities changed and you had to put in deposits and then we decide you didn't want the house? I didn't protect your money. And so I don't have you do things that's going to particularly put you at risk, even if it's for some people, $100 may not be much, but it's still money. And so that's important to me. Then we're going to actually go into doing your utilities, and we do have Just Right concierge services that will help you put your utilities in. They'll help you if you want to do an alarm system. You just got to tell you what area you're in. And then for the home insurance quote, you don't pay for it. You simply call up your brokers, and Judge Right Insurance will be one of them that you can check. I highly recommend that you also look at whoever you have your car insurance with because you're going to get a bundle policy discount if you do that. And then you're going to tell them, hey, I'm moving to 123 Main Street on XYZ date. And they're going to give you a declaration page. You're going to hand that page over to Ron so that he can properly balance out your account. And then at close, that will be included in part of your closing costs, along with your prepayment, your other prepayments, which kind of include your mortgage and so forth. Then we're going to move into negotiations. Negotiations, depending on how we structure deal at the beginning, may or may not be very big, and sometimes it is. But if we structure it right, we're going to take care of it in the beginning. But then we're going to decide, are we going to do credit at close or are we going to have them do repairs? Some things we may do credit at close. Some things we may want repaired in advance. If it's a foundation issue, because foundation issues hide other issues, we're going to want them to take care of something like that prior to close. So that if we ask for 5,000 and it ends up costing 10, you're not out five. If it's something like, oh, some locks are broken or a window doesn't properly lock, that may be something where we just ask for a couple of $100 cash at close because you can pick and select who it is you want to do that repair after the fact. Um, then we're going to have our loan process, and that's where you're working with Ron in the background with underwriting. If you're using the T-Shack program, you will have to take, I think the class is like 4 hours. You will
Online.
have to take you will have to take this. I know my clients do it in one day. You will have to take this one class, and it's phenomenal. It's actually how I ended up in real estate because I took it when I was getting my house. And that is, it kind of walks you through a lot of what it is to take care of a house, how do you maintain a house, what you should anticipate with your lenders, how do you talk to your realtors, and so forth. So it's not a punitive, it's really more of an educational component when you're going into this process because they are giving you up to 5% towards the price of the home. They want to make sure that you can take care of that home and you know how to properly take care of it. Then we'll move into step 10, and that's the title company. They're going to prepare all the documents and we're going to do our walkthrough. Now, this final walkthrough, we're going to go in to make sure two things. One, that this is the home that we put an offer in on. And two, if there were repairs that needed to be made, that those repairs were made to the degree that we want them to be made in. Then step 11, we'll get to the title company with Ron. We've already got our money when we walk in, which is what I love, table funding. We'll sign our documents. They'll send them over to Ron. They'll approve, and I can hand off your keys. And that's how the process goes. The reason why that is so important, because Ron hinted at it, I had a deal where I was the selling agent. And this particular client, God bless them, had a realtor who decided vacation was more important than the timing of their option period. And so she went on vacation during their option, waited until the very last day of their option to do the inspection, and didn't give me the repairs until 30 minutes before option ended. And I couldn't get a hold of my client so that I could see if my client wanted to do it. And I kept giving her hints because remember, I worked for the seller at that time and not for the buyer. And I kept trying to give her hints going, hey, I haven't spoken to my client, basically saying if you want to cancel this contract, this would be your time to do it because I can't do anything. She didn't do anything. And then she wanted us to do repairs, a whole bunch of repairs. And she ended up getting minimum repairs because option has ended and now they were stuck in the contract for no other reason. But we did everything that was safety related and so forth. This very same client did not know the loan process for her clients. And this particular lender required 72-hour notice after receiving the documents before they would fund. The problem with that is they had scheduled our closing for the same day that her client's lease was ending, and they had to vacate their apartment. And so they wanted us to do what's known as a temporary lease on their property. No one in the state of Texas, because of the way our property laws work, is going to allow a buyer to move into a property that they do not own. And so they had to basically go through a process of finding their client a property, an Airbnb for like 4 days on top of the money they had already paid, and they were putting 20% down. on top of the money they had already paid because they could not gain access to the property because that's how important closing and funding is to this entire process. I say all that to say is it is extremely important that whoever you're working with do not treat this as a hobby.
Yes.
This is extremely important. These dates matter. Their time is of the essence, and we take those very seriously. I put every time we execute a contract, every last one of your dates, all of your due dates will have tickle dates in my calendar. So I have updates to know where we are in that process, and I can check in with you to ensure that we're not missing any of those dates. Because at the end of the day, yes, I want you to find that dream home, that vacation home, that forever home, that starter home, whatever it is. But more importantly, I want to protect your money because my goal and Ron goals is the same. We don't want just your first deal. We want every single transaction, real estate transaction you have. And to get that, we've got to earn it every single time.
Absolutely.
Ron, I think that's it, isn't it?
Yeah, we went through this pretty quick. Now we got
We
lots of
did
time
fast
for
today.
questions. That's because I was
Now
not
we're
on medicine. I was about to go on a spirit journey. I was like thinking throwing in jokes halfway through the thing. I have a medicine over here. I'm playing with it. Like,
tell them about your medicine so they don't think. I remember you do that every time.
oh, sorry. I am ADHD.
Okay.
I don't know if that's a shock to anybody on this conversation here. And so you'll see when I do take it, it'll be a different person. I'll be like locked in. But I haven't taken it yet. And that's okay. But here we are. And I got through my stuff wicked quick because I'm like, I
You
gotta stay
did.
focused or I will be lost. So
You did. I can
I'm
pull you out the rabbit hole. So with that
yeah,
being
see, I was in the zone. I was like, all right, I'm hyper focused on doing what I'm supposed to do. And usually, like, it takes like 45 minutes. I think I got through mine in like 15. So,
you did run through the slides today.
yeah, I did run through it. But that's why I want to come back and answer anything and let people know what's up because you know, just being transparent. I didn't. I was in the zone and haven't had my medicine yet. So, if there's any questions, that's what this is for, and we go over anything you want. And I have all extra stuff. You want to go a side quest? You know, if you guys want to go down some rabbit holes with me, like we could talk about the market, my pet peeves, my annoyance with LLPAs, anything. But yeah, happy to answer any questions you guys have and go from there. And obviously, you get a coupon for me to cover your appraisal when working with me in closing and funding. So that'll be huge. So I'll make sure you guys get a copy of that.
I actually put it in and I put it in twice because we had people come in and so they should have it.
Hey, Spy Michelle's the best. I refer my parents to her because like that's what she does. She all like this really good thing. I'm good at math. And so like and problem solving. And Michelle's got all the checklists and I'm a systems person too, but I didn't have it all loaded up today. So Michelle's taking that one for the win. I love it. But yeah, it's a little coupon. It's up to I think $700 to cover your appraisal, and we appreciate your time today. But yeah, ask away any questions, and I'll
Is
stop
there an
sharing my screen.
attachment? Yeah, there should have been two. Do you see the one for home buyer booklet and coupon appraisal? Let me resend them.
Oh, we have a chat.
Yep, they're in the chat.
I didn't even know that button was there. Is there an attachment? I see the attachments on my side.
Yeah, I'm seeing them too. That's why I'm confused.
See them
Sorry.
on,
Oh, sorry.
we don't see them in the chat on
I wonder
our
if
side.
is the chat restricted to
Did you
everyone?
restrict the chat, Ron?
I don't think so. But what I'm gonna see if what if I slide it in there and let me see what happens here.
Okay.
Oh, there we go.
Okay, yeah, now
Now,
I see it.
now there's a PDF.
Ah,
Okay. Lisa, did you get it? You got it?
okay,
Okay.
sweet. It was a me thing. I had to click this little wizard button where there's like a bunch of people on it and it says everyone. So when I hit that, I think it might have opened it up. So
Okay.
that was a me error.
Oh yeah, you didn't join me in this time. That's okay.
We're gonna start over.
It is quite
They
okay.
didn't get the full whammy. No, but yeah, I didn't put you as a co-host. That's why it didn't happen.
That's why I
Oops.
didn't show everybody this time. So let me
Yep.
send them the other one too so that they have that as well. And the other one is just, it's kind of what Ran Ron talked about. It's just kind of like a booklet and a reference guide back for you
Mhm.
about the entire process, as well as it talks about like maintenance, about how much you should save on a monthly basis, as it goes to monthly repairs and so forth. It's a little longer, so it's taking its time. Okay, there it goes.
What happens
What
if the appraisal?
happens if the appraisal of the house comes in less than the purchase price? Great question. From my perspective, we're going to have three options. The first option is going to be to talk to the seller, to see if they will reduce the sales price of the home, to
Mhm.
what the appraisal price is. The second option is going to be to see if you and the seller are willing to split the difference from what the appraisal price is, so that you can still keep the home if you want it at that time. The third option is you can walk away and get your earnest money back. I had this happen to a client on a new bill. And on new bills, if you don't know, you prepay all of your design expenses when you build from the ground up. And so she had already paid $25,000 for her design. She had already paid $10,000 for her option. And so her home was valued, where was sold at $444,000, but it appraised for $417,000, which was basically everything without the design. And they were not wanting to give her anything else. And she was a veteran, which is a passion of mine. And so I explained to them, she's been in this property or building this property for almost 9 months. We need $2,000 from you guys for us to close this deal. And at the very least, she's already paid $35,000. You can do that. And we close that deal. That's what happens.
Yep. And a side thing that your lender can look at, if there is a reason to justify what's called a reconsideration of value. Because sometimes appraisers miss things or additional comps sold or additional properties in the area sell between when they did the inspection. And so that could potentially get the home up, but it's not up to you. It's not up to the sellers to ask you to do a reconsideration of value. It's only if the buyer wants to start that process. And so what that would look like is your realtor and the listing agent would get together and show additional comps, and we would review the appraisal to see what ones were there. Were there extra adjustments by the appraiser that might not have been justified? Because what we're doing is we're submitting this to the underwriter for them to flaw the appraisal and order a new appraisal report. So there are a couple mechanisms in place, but we don't want you to have to push the value up if we don't think it's there. Because again, it goes to protect your investment. If the property is not appraised, and that means that maybe the listing agent didn't have the price right, even though it's probably worth it, but at the market, things can happen. So Nichelle's gear, because she's there to protect your money, is we're going to go to see if the seller's going to drop the price to match the appraisal. They don't have to. That's a point where you could walk away and get your earnest money back. Are they willing to negotiate anything? And if they're not, and you still really love the home, then we can start the reconsideration of value. So before you pay more money out of pocket, let's look at that, see if we can get the appraisal value up some by presenting better information to a new appraiser, or pay the difference. But yeah, there are some mechanisms in place that I can do on my end as a lender, but that's where we want to make sure that it's in your best interest and it's justified. Just know that there is a process behind the scenes that we can take as well, and it's called a reconsideration of value.
And so our next one is, I have heard a lot about the volatility of the housing market. Is there truly a best time to buy? I'm going to answer that, and then I'll let Ron piggyback. And then, have you seen more starter home communities being built in the area? I'll answer that, and I'll let Ron piggyback. So, is there truly a best time to buy? There is. Angel, the best time to buy is when you can afford to buy. And that's just the complete honesty. When we run the numbers, when you talk with a lender, when you are financially in a position, depending on what it is that you're trying to buy, that is the best time to buy. We have been seeing a lot of communities being built in the areas. But the thing about starter home communities is my cousin bought her home in 1995, new construction home. She paid $100,000 for it. A starter home in DFW is somewhere around 350, 400,000. So still a starter home, but price values have tripled 300, 400%. And so there are still a lot of communities out there where you can find those homes. What I tell a lot of my clients, I would much rather prefer a pre-owned home that has very strong bones, that has been rehabbed, that has been updated, than a new construction home that they put on the market and built in 3 months. My home was built in 1931. 3 years ago, it was taken to studs. There is nothing taking this home down save a fire. I've gone into new communities after a storm and I've seen frames built in. Not all builders, but there are particular builders that I will not send my clients to.
Yep.
Good question.
And I'll piggyback on that too about the volatility of the housing market. A lot of that is based on media because they're paid by clicks and engagement. That's why I went over the home price appreciation chart since 1942 to show how stable the housing market has been over the last nearly 90 years. And that's through World War II, Vietnam, Korean War, gas short, all of those things. Homes are stabilized investments because you have to, one, they're an asset where if you put money in, it's a hedge against inflation, but also it's one of the most stable investment vehicles you can have because it's your home and you get your equity growth two ways. One, forced savings through principal balance reduction. So it means every time you make your payment, a portion goes to principal, and then appreciation. And even if it's 1% appreciation to sometimes there's 19% appreciation in 1 year, but that's where the housing market itself can experience volatility in that if you are forced to sell and it's not a time period where it's conducive for selling, like people who bought new construction in 2023 or 2022 when inventories were so low, they might have paid more than what the house was necessarily worth. Now, if they try to sell it 2 years later because they had a escrow account shortage, that's something that when we're talking about protecting money, with a new build, it doesn't mean you shouldn't look at them. It just needs to be that you need to make sure that you understand not just this transaction, but your cost to sell if you had to sell in the next 3 to 6 years. Because if you're going into a new build as a first-time home buyer, for instance, you're usually putting 3%, 5% down, which is great, but that means you have 5% equity position. If they're constantly building new homes in the area, when you have to battle against supply and demand, if it's got a constant influx of supply, your demand for your pre-owned home is going to be less in those neighborhoods. So if you had to sell a year two or year three, because statistically first-time home buyers are in their home 3 to 6 years, you are now competing against the builder's lender, and that new inventory for your pre-existing home. It's going to be tough to sell that home. And so those are the things when you're going into it. Some people go into it thinking, I'm going to have a warranty. It's going to be a safer bet because the home is new. It's not been lived in. But again, you can get a home warranty usually covered for the first year if you have a good realtor who's going to negotiate that, which is going to cover the same things that the builder's warranty is going to cover. Your homeowner's insurance is going to cover you from catastrophic loss. It's about the strategy about your next deal, not just this one. So not to tell you not to look at new builds. It's just to consider the risks and when you're going into your investment. What are the potential threats? Like if you're in corporate America or in any shape or form, they are SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. When you do that with your home and you detach from the emotional position of the buying process and look at it as an investment, what are my threats? What are my opportunities? What's the strengths and weaknesses of this deal? It's something that'll help you walk through, especially when you're evaluating properties to put offers on, is let's look at the report card for the home. Let's look at the home price appreciation over the last 5, 10, and 63 years and make sure that you're making a sound investment. And also the property taxes. Are they currently set up on unimproved value? What that is the land. When you're buying a new build, most year, on the first year, it's the unimproved. So your taxes might only be like 1,000 for the year. It sounds awesome. But once it recalculates next year for the full value, now it goes up 10,000. Now you're short. And if you already were tight on your payment and now you got to pay back $9,000 shortage, plus make sure you're not short again the next year, your payment goes up 2,000, 2,500 per month. And most people are already kind of buying at the top of their budget at that point. And if you ever heard of DR Horton and DHI Mortgage, they are currently under a massive lawsuit right now in Florida. It's a class action and it will spread across the country because of this exact thing that I was screaming and freaking out about 3, 4 years ago when I saw it happening, because the inventories were so low, builders were like, come to us, do this. And they were approving people off the unimproved tax rate. So you might come to a regular lender and they might approve you 350 because we're going to use the real tax rate. But you go to the builder's lender, they're approving you for 400, 425. They're like, why can't I get approved for 400, 425, the builder? Well, they're giving you a tax rate of BS. And so that next year, that's why a lot of people are facing short sales and foreclosures. And that's why those lawsuits are coming. But the volatility in the market sometimes is manufactured by media, because now you're hearing a totally different story by them. Oh man, rates are at a 3-year low. They're at right under 6%, which it's been that way off and on for the last 8 months. But now the media is covering it different. And you can always negotiate buy downs and seller concessions. So that's where some of the stuff with the volatility. And for instance, like when Nichelle just mentioned it, and her friend bought a house in the 90s for 100 grand. So the best time to buy a house was 20 years ago. And so, or, but again, but we can't go back in time yet. And if you can, please pick me up because I want to go punch some people in the throat before we get to this point today, because shouldn't be here today if we would have corrected some problems back then. And so, but right now, what Nichelle said is accurate. Buy what you can comfortably afford. Don't buy something to impress somebody else. If you've been living in and happy in a 1-bedroom condo and let's look at what you can comfortably afford. Maybe that's your first investment. Why not buy a 1-bedroom condo or apartment instead of, oh, I have to wait to buy a 4-bedroom house with 2 baths because I'm going to have a family in 5 years. And like, okay, cool, let's do that in 5 years. But right now, let's make sure you're easily affording your home, building equity, and maybe that property debt services. And now you have a rental property that can have passive income, and you can still buy your next home as a primary residence and put 3 or 5% down, whatever the program we go with, and use down payment assistance. So there's strategies that we can put in place to make sure we help you, get into a home that you can comfortably afford. So that's the key, is not ever pushing your budget, because what if property taxes go up a little bit? Because they can every year. What if your insurance goes up every year? So if somebody's ever trying to push you to spend more than you comfortably can afford right now, they do not care about your next deal. They do not care about getting and earning your friends and family's business, because they just think this transaction is going to close and I won't ever talk to them again. But that would be so embarrassing if we miss something and we're calling you, hey, it's time for your annual review. It's like, yeah, this call could be a fist fight. Like, I'm in this house, you didn't protect me, and this has got a leak in the roof, I got a this or that, and you still want to call and ask me for my friends? No. And that's the part where it's a difference between a transactional relationship and somebody who's going to be there with you every step of the way. But yeah, no hate and shade against starter home communities, but you just have to understand the risk. 3 to 6 years as first-time home buyers. Part of that is they don't know what they don't know. So they get into a house, they're like, holy crap, I have to pay for maintenance in the yard and all these other things. I don't like this. And now I got to force to sell because my property taxes went up a little bit. My homeowner's insurance went up a little bit. All of that could have been avoided if somebody would have cared about them a little bit more and did a little bit more in-depth analysis. But yeah, that's a great questions.
Cool. We have any more? If we have a senior parent moving in to live with us, but we are purchasing the home, can we put them on the title to claim senior citizen exemption? And if so, when do we do that in the purchase process? Ron, I'll let you start with that one.
Yeah, there's a couple of different things, and that's a great strategy. So a lot of us don't want to talk about the fact that we're all rushing head first into the fact that we're all going to die and age. And so I don't mind that conversation because it's the reality of life. And we all have parents, if they're still with us, that are also heading to that time period. What is our plan for them? Do we want to put them in a $10,000 a month senior living facility? Or is there a strategy we could have put in place early enough to maybe build a property or buy a property with an accessory dwelling unit to where our family has a place to live with us? Now we can afford in-home care. So if your parent who is a senior citizen, if potentially might be able to help qualify for more home if they're willing, if they're wanting to be on the loan, because maybe they get Social Security or some kind of income that we could add to it, and now you could get a nice property where, especially if you're doing a one-time closed construction loan, where you could build an accessory dwelling unit in the back and make it specific to their needs. So when you're thinking about retirement plans, not just yours, but it's also your parents. What are their plans? So then how do we align this together to maybe put in a place where they have walk-in showers or whatever it would look like for them? And now at the next phase of life, when they either are forced into long-term care or pass away, now you have a property that you can rent out and now help with supplement your mortgage. And so there's ways to look at that. So yes, there are ways to, if they're going to be on title, properly documenting that, having that conversation with your lender, with the title company, knowing how things are going to be titled, and then filing for that exemption. Now, when you're filing for exemptions, usually you're going to put on who has what percentage of ownership. And so that's where you'd have to go into and make sure it's documented. There's also potential concepts around protecting that asset where you'd want to talk to an estate attorney, family planner, especially with Social Security being able to do like a 5-year look back period. So if they do have ownership interest in your property, is that going to tie that property up in any way if they did have to go into long-term care where the Social Security office could put a lien against your property? So there's things to just consider in that. But yes, it is possible, but there could be additional ways to make sure to protect your asset in case of
And
any
that's what
kind of
yeah.
random thing. Yeah.
And that's where I just put into the chat. It's actually something that I did with my own mother, and which is how I inherited my home. In the state of Texas, we have something that is known as transfer of deed on death. And it is something that I have done for all of my family members, and I have recommended all of my clients do. And it is simply a document that means that if you file it prior to a person's passing, you don't have to take that property through probate. You simply file an affidavit of death, and the home immediately transfers to that person. And that's what me and my mother did for our family home. Even though she wasn't, we thought she may be ending up well, I might as well say. When I moved, I might as well tell the story real quickly. So I moved back home about 2.5 years ago to take care of my mom. Thought we were going to be living together for at least 10 or 15 years. She was 83 years old, and she said, I'm tired of making decisions. I don't want to make decisions anymore. And if you knew anything about my 411 mom, when she said something, she meant it. And so I moved home June 3rd of 2023. In November of 2023, we learned that my mom had pancreatic cancer. And so my mom was a planner, and she planned everything down to the flowers that we were going to have at her memorial service. And so she wanted to make sure the house was taken care of. So we did some research. We filed the affidavit. We thought we were going to put her on Medicare. And what Ron was talking about is something called MERP. And MERP is something that if you use benefits upon your death, if you have property, they reclaim the expenses and equity of what you use for their services. We ended up not needing to do it, but just to protect it, there is one caveat with that program. If the spouse or a child was living in that home prior to a year before the passing of that person, and you have this transfer on deed, that basically shields that property from the government being able to take it. And that is how, had we used it, um, and my neighbor did use it, and her daughter, who lives across the street from me now, was able to keep the home, is because her daughter had moved in 2 years prior to her mom expiring. And so that's what Ron was talking about.
Yep. Great question. Anybody got anything else?
You got anything else? Those are good questions, guys.
You could throw some razzle dazzle at us. Something weird.
We can go a little lighter.
Yeah. I think it's interesting. I'm dealing with my parents. I'm a lot less nice than Nichelle. I'm like, don't make me clean up your mess when you die. I was like, I'm not going to be nice. You used to tell me, go to my room, figure it out on my own. Same for you. I'm
Hence
a
why
little
he's getting
less,
ready to
but
have me
not
sell his
really.
parents' house so that they
Yep.
can move.
Yep. It's time. My dad is the grumpiest man you ever met. My mom's psycho. So they've calmed a little bit down in their old age, but it's time, and I'm done playing games. So that's the time. Some of these conversations that nobody teaches us. Does anyone on this call know what it's like to be an adult yet? Like anybody hit that number, like we're in their head, they're like, I'm an adult today. Like, no. But we eventually have to parent our parents. Like this is not training we got in school, but a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Super excited about that today. Never
Leave
used
that
it.
theorem alone, man.
Yeah, exactly. But here we are. And that's it. The reality of what we have to experience in life is that. And that's where it's like aftercare with parents. What's that look like? What does it like mean to be in home ownership? What are we doing for our kids and our legacy? And so I know that some of it, I make light of it and joke, but it is something to consider. There's property, there's stuff. How do we make sure you're protected in your home and make sure that if anything happens, because we things happen, how do we make sure you're protected in that?
Ron,
And
can you talk about, and
mhm,
I don't think we've ever talked about this in our homebuyer seminar, but since we're on that subject,
mhm.
with the transfer deed on death, if you have a loan, you still have a mortgage. So can you talk about the actual, not the mortgage insurance as part of a loan, but the mortgage insurance in case of death?
Yeah, there are types of insurance that you can take out where that will cover or pay off the house if one of the people on the mortgage dies. And so it's not like life insurance, it's insurance against your property. And so it's something to definitely look at and consider, especially after closing. It's like, hey, look, let's get some insurance on ourselves for the house. It's literally only meant to protect the like pay off the house. So it's relatively inexpensive, like a few $100s. And you have protection that if anything happens during that time period and one of the people that are on the mortgage pass away, that the house is paid off or a portion of it, whatever you decide on the insurance. But it's definitely something to look at and make sure that you have some protections there in place just in case.
Because at the end of the day, it all boils down to your financial future and protecting that every way that we can. We talk about the home insurance, and on every policy that I write for my clients, we write a home insurance warranty into it.
Yes.
We write a warranty that will cover you for the 12 months. We can just do a basic one or we can do a full-fledged one depending on what the seller is willing to pay. But the difference, you can always add a couple of $100 to get the max one, and it
Yep.
comes in handy because shortly after my mom went home, this 1931 home had a plumbing issue. And luckily, I was well enough in this career that I had increased her service line coverage. And so, what would have cost me $15,000 to replace my entire plumbing line, and then the city replaced their side as well, cost me $50 simply because I had insurance. And that's how you save and protect your financial. You have to offset and mitigate these issues. And our goals is helping you mitigate as much as possible.
Mhm. Yep.
And we do it through
Insurance
life
warranty.
experiences, like the
Hmm.
flood that he came into last weekend at his house. Sorry, touchy subject, I know.
If I find that builder, I've got bail money. Just understand, you might see me on the news. Don't judge me, but it's costing me a lot of money. But just the house looks great, but that's where our lived experience is gonna help you guys benefit. I joked with Daniel and on the call about the bathtubs on our first house. It was cute, but I'm never making that mistake again. And so I learned from that. I've helped 2,000 families with theirs, but lived experience is totally different than like work experience. And so I've bought and sold like 5 or 6 homes now for my own self. And every one I learn a little bit more different lived experiences, like paying attention to closets. That's huge. Bathtubs, huge. Like those compromising. Now I know more because like usually they don't address the dirt stuff unless you're in a VA or FHA loan. And this is above conforming loan limit, so it was a conventional loan. They didn't address it in the appraisal. It didn't come up and it wasn't on my inspection report. And so that's where you have the right inspector. because those people can be sued. Everyone in the party can be in the law, in the transaction can be sued. And obviously, that's why realtors are talking about protecting your money because they have a fiduciary responsibility to you. It's part of their why they have to have buyer's rep agreements signed because it activates their fiduciary responsibility to you. Because that means that you can sue them if anything doesn't go the right way. But yes, lived experience, you go through all of the things that and then I can pass it along to you because like, why do you got to step in the pothole? If I could just say, hey, yo, watch out for that. It's like 3 feet away. Just and now you don't have to experience the snapped ankle I had. And part of that is just a little bit more due diligence, even though it might look good. Double check the stuff. Avoid that. But yes, thank you for the remembrance of me wanting to find where the builder lives.
Anything I can do to help.
She knows I'm gonna find him. But yeah. Any other questions before I get
Any
in
other
trouble?
questions, anybody?
And this is recorded.
We got time. If you
Forget
don't,
what
then
you
we're
heard me
okay.
say. Yeah, we do have time, but we could also, if nobody has questions, we can give it
You
back
know
to
what time we'll
them.
let you get on with your Saturday morning, either way.
Yep. Anything?
Do, 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 do.
Cool.
Alrighty then. Well, everyone, thank you so much for spending time with us out here Saturday morning. We have truly enjoyed this. We do host these once a month. In case you just want to come in and listen to us go through this process, you're more than welcome to. Our next one we're actually going to do in person at the office, though, so that will be a little bit different. You can always reach out to us any question. Ron and I say the same thing every time, and that is whether you work with us or not, we are here as your resource.
Absolutely. And isn't there like a surprise on this one coming up in March that the in-person action?
What are we doing?
I thought there was like a raffle or something going on. I don't
There
remember.
may be. Oh, we did talk about that.
Cool. Sweet. There's some surprises if you want to be at that one, but you don't have to. If you're not, I
Sweet.
won't judge you. A little.
All righty, everyone. It
I'll
has
see you at
been
the
a
open
pleasure. It has
house.
been a joy. Ron, I guess I'll see you in a couple of hours. He's going to join me at an open house I've got. Everyone else, you guys have a great one. Be safe. Talk to you soon.
Bye.